Critics are complaining about Donald Trump sending federal troops to Los Angeles to quell protests. California Governor Gavin Newsom never, ever requested for the troops to come in. That's normally the protocol where a governor requests National Guard troops. Trump chose on his own. While that happened, this week he went to Fort Bragg, where he gave a shameful and despicable speech where we now know, according to Military Times, where they literally were casting soldiers, did not want overweight soldiers to be in the stands behind him. They wanted soldiers that agreed with the political ideology of Donald Trump. And during that speech, he was ripping President Biden, he was ripping the media, and you heard the cheering of these troops. Folks, in this country, the military is not used as political props. But the draft dodger, Mr. Bone Spurs, the man who also didn't have the courage to go see the grave sites of American soldiers, a man who is called soldiers that have given their lives for this country losers. That's this individual right here. The actions that he is taking is something that we have not seen ever before. But again, we told people this was going to happen, and folks did not listen to us. A number of military members, commanders who are still serving, are quietly pushing back. Many were highly critical of what happened this week at Fort Bragg. They see also what's happening right now in Los Angeles. It's not good. But the problem is, we know that under this administration, under this joke of a Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, and if any one of those generals or commanders, if they go public, they're going to be fired. It's going to happen. And so to give us a sense of what is being talked about in the military community, we're joined right now by retired U.S. Army Brigadier General Arnold Gordon Bray from Rocky Mount, North Carolina. Glad to have you on the show, Fred. Let's just give our folks a sense. You are, listen, once in the military, always in the military. I've been corresponding with other retired generals and others, and members of the military, individuals who may be Republican, individuals who may be conservative. They are shocked by what they're seeing and how Donald Trump is frankly pimping the U.S. military for his purposes.
Well, first of all, thank you very much. It is it's appalling, and to be very candid, I don't think that the folks who have the uniform zone, whether we're in uniform, they really should not be speaking out because one, that's almost like a preemptive strike against something that they don't know for a fact to be either illegal or immoral yet. The driving idea behind the separation of the military from the civilian force is called this thing called pacta comitatus. It puts the civilians in charge of us. In fact, I love Ronald Dellum's, rest in peace. He, a former Marine, made the statement to General Sullivan when he retired that he was going to become the most powerful member in America when he retired, because the civilian force does command the military. That's fair. Then that's how it should be. At the same time, we are not to interface, and there are multiple reasons why we should not interface in a direct way. You know, Big U from the former member of the Crips talked about how he wants to make sure that we don't put people, he used the word homies. We don't want homies trying to run other homies. It's hard. And similarly, what you don't want to have is your civilians who've now been trained, Army, Marine Corps, Space Force, Air Force, Navy, now trained, coming back in with their own ideology and trying to run the neighborhoods, or under somebody else's leadership running it with that kind of training. That's part one. The other thing is that our job is to fight and win the nation's wars. You don't want someone whose job is to get in that zone, identify a threat, make it an enemy, and to be fair, kill it and win. kill him or her and win. That's a mindset. And so what we have to make sure that we don't do is let someone who takes this collective weapon and use it against civilians, because that's not their job. You know, God bless the guys who put the uniforms on as policemen, sheriffs, because they have learned and over time how to de-escalate. That's what Governor Newsom, he's seen riots before. His people have seen riots before, and they know how to.
Well, first of all, to your general, to your point, the police chief of the LAPD has said, no, we did not request troops. This has not risen to the level where we need that. He also has been critical by saying that the actions, even now the troops, well, the federal law enforcement officers, them firing tear gas has made their job easier. The NYPD has said the same thing. And what they've said is these federal agents, they aren't trained in that. That's not what they do. And they're like, leave that stuff up to us.
Yes. You know how to manage it. You know how to deal with people. You know, the civilian law enforcers, their practice, they walked into houses, into the hood, whereby they walk between a husband and a wife who have weapons in their hands, and they know how to de-escalate that piece, and then they know how to isolate. We do that in foreign countries, and we practice it. And to be fair, as a paratrooper, I had a little more experience doing it, but at the same time, I'm going to tell you, my guys were trained to break things and kill people. You don't want to do that. You want to bring them in. And so when you start to try to take these weapons, these people whose mindset is designed to do something different, especially if you don't have any time to transition them, to be able to de-escalate their warrior skills. You know, when the Brits go up into Northern Ireland, there's a transition period that they make them go through and rehearse both the reaction. We were doing that when we were in that period of operations other than war in the late 90s. We would send people through training processes. We keep forgetting that if you take a soldier, sailor, and a Marine, and put him in front of civilians, if that civilian responds to him, he first becomes just a threat. Then he becomes an enemy. That's the last thing we want in this nation. That's the last thing we want in this nation. You know, Chairman Kane, who's our current chairman of the Joint Chiefs, he's the only person on active duty that really has stepped up to, and by the way, that's his job, to interface between the civilian and the military. That's his job, to advise. And he clearly advised in a letter to the president that you cannot politicize our military, because he saw the danger in it. Similar to Mark Milley, when they watched that, it's great that we have that kind of leadership still in the uniform that says you're going to a different level. You can't bring our forces like that. You know, a young Marine had indicated that he would be not so kind to anyone who spat on him. And see, on the surface, you think that's just that young Marine. But that Marine is part of the Marine Corps. He is a friend. And after contact, soldiers, sailors, airmen, we fight for each other. This thing can evolve and devolve into something that we don't want it to be. You hit the nail on the head.
So General, the thing that again, that people have to understand, and Trump officials that they do this when they say Trump's military, Trump's army, Trump's Marines. No, they're not. And presidents are very careful to understand when their language, because they understand that even though that person is the commander in chief, there's a hierarchy, there's a chain of command that that the military cannot be seen as being used for partisan purposes. That the military does not identify as blue or red, Democrat or Republican. The military is about serving the American people. But what you have here, you literally have, Pete Hegseth walking around. I served in combat. I know more about this than all of you. And they are taking a wrecking ball to so many firewalls in the Pentagon. And what you do, in the first time, you literally had a wall there. You had individuals who said, no, we can't allow these things to happen. That wall doesn't exist. There now is a straight line from whatever is going through the mind of that idiot Trump right through decisions made at the Pentagon. And so when you're talking to your fellow retired Army officers and other members of the military, what are they saying with what they are witnessing right now?
Yeah. First of all, I'm reluctant to really call the commander-in-chief any names, and we can do that because, but the reality is that we're,
yeah, I can. Yeah, I can.
You can. You can. We're all service, and to that end, right now, what you have is you have the retirees and the active force. Their conversations, but they're looking at it literally through the lens of service and making sure that we're able to ultimately be able to do the things that we're asked to. You're asked to fight and win the nation's wars. That's why you maintain an army. Nations don't disagree because they maintain armies. They maintain armies because they disagree. And if you start to make it so that our military is now assigned to or believe that they follow the orders of the president of the United States, that's the oath that you take when you first join. The oath you take the moment you hit from sergeant on up, it is clearly to the Constitution. In fact, even the senators and congressmen take that off. It's to the Constitution. And Congress has a responsibility to actually raise the Army, to get the Army and prepare it for its use. The unfortunate piece that I don't think even our forefathers foresaw is that we would have people who don't even understand all of its uses and the impacts of it. Because you figure, remember, our leaders were born out of conflict at the time they're writing, and I all kind of understood they had worked with Washington when they were crafting this thing, and even the others were diplomats on a larger scale. They couldn't envision that we'd have someone who had not fought before, someone who would be selfish. Now that part I will say without hesitation, because it's about him.
Well, you know what, General, I'll have to disagree with you. I disagree with you on this point. They did foresee this, but what they also established were checks and balances. The problem that we have right now, okay, you could say the emoluments clause, you could say all those things. They actually foresaw problems. The problem that we have here is that there are no checks and balances. Historically, we have had Democrats challenge a Democratic president when it came to their actions by saying, you're violating the United States Constitution. It was Republicans, Tennessee Senator Howard Baker, others who made that walk up Pennsylvania Avenue to Nixon saying,
let me clean up this a little bit. Because
so the problem is, hold on. So the only problem we have right now is we have a Republican Party that has completely capitulated, and they will not put this man in check. They won't do it. And Democrats, because they don't control the House or the Senate, they literally are left powerless to do anything. And that's really where we are. I mean, he's ignoring court orders.
Yeah, we did not disagree on that piece because in fact, you've heard me say this. We're at the threat with the vine. What I meant was we didn't foresee somebody who would not understand its implications. And I apologize that because you're absolutely correct that that's the threat to our entire democracy, is that if we have a person who is not maintained, is not in check by the judiciary and also the people's representative, the legislature, you're spot on there. I don't think there's sufficient pushback against him. And I mentioned earlier, it is the responsibility of Congress to go ahead and raise and provide those forces. And in our wisdom, we did in fact give governors a military element to go ahead and assist. That's that National Guard capability. And by the way, National Guard, they're twice the citizen. They are folks who come from the field. They know how to interface as well, but at a different level. And that to that end,
yeah,
when they
absolutely.
when they come into the fight, you focus those into protection of infrastructure and let the law enforcement interface with the people. So there's even kind of a roll up, a format of how you use the different tiers of forces. And to your point, it's very clear that our forefathers saw a threat that if you ever gave too much power to one person, one entity, that's why they separated those powers, and they gave the judiciary the requirement and responsibility to be one, co-equal, and two, to interpret the Constitution, and then to issue those laws to help govern it. So yeah, you're spot on, and we agree with that. And there are many, especially.
But before I go to my panel with questions,
that also see this in voice, and you'll see some of them in the paper. So I mean, they'll make comment, but all of us are still trying to make sure that we aren't part of the problem, whereby someone thinks that there's this shadow force that's evolving and emerging. What we're trying to do is give our best advice to people who are in charge, to talk to our leaders in legislature, try to get some of them to wake up and push forward. And by the way, across party lines, the challenge that's been put down, and the gauntlet has been thrown down by the money that backs these representatives. You've got Musk, who said basically, and even though he's split, he's now made up. He's still backing the horses, right, and telling them and saying, if you go against what he's decided, right, I'm gonna do something to you. I'm gonna make sure that you're a last term, whatever you are. Those are the other dangers. That's kind of the back end or the gunpowder in these decisions.
We talked about you mentioned General Mark Milley, former Joint Chiefs of Staff leader, and it was a short speech, but this was his outgoing message that he delivered that still resonates, and it's most important when it comes to what we are facing right now. This was a warning that he gave to the country. Unfortunately, the country did not heed his warning. Listen.
I'm deeply honored to have worn the cloth of this nation for 43 and a half years, and I'm humbled to have served as the 20th chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. But today is not about anyone up here on this stage. It's not about the President, the Secretary of Defense, me, CQ. It's not about us. It's about something much larger than all of us. It's about our democracy. It's about our republic. We are unique among the world's armies. We are unique among the world's militaries. We don't take an oath to a country. We don't take an oath to a tribe. We don't take an oath to a religion. We don't take an oath to a king or a queen or to a tyrant or a dictator. And we don't take an oath to a wannabe dictator. We don't take an oath to an individual. We take an oath to the Constitution, and we take an oath to the idea that it's America, and we're willing to die to protect it. Those values and ideas are contained within the Constitution of the United States of America, which is the moral North Star for all of us who have the privilege of wearing the cloth of our nation. It is that document that all of us in uniform swear to protect and defend against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Those who sacrificed themselves on the altar of freedom in the last 2.5 centuries of this country must not have done so in vain. The millions wounded in our nation's wars did not sacrifice their limbs and shed their blood to see this great experiment in democracy perish from this earth. No, we, the American people, we, the American military, must never turn our back on those that came before us. And we will never turn our back on the Constitution. That is our North Star. That is who we are, and that is why we fight. Thank you, and may God bless our military, and may God bless the United States of America.
General Miller's a great guy, and we worked together. He actually worked for me for a week before I left. Good man, and that those aren't words. That's his DNA. You were going to say something. I'm sorry. He is. What you heard was you heard him articulating what every officer and for sure every person who's a senior leader has in their core, which is that commitment to this nation and to protect those soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marine, Coast Guardsmen, and spacemen when they are given and use the word privilege to command. And I said something earlier, if you understand it's both a privilege to lead and command America's sons and daughters, you treat them as precious as you can, as you make them hard and do those tough things that very few people are willing to do. And so if you're going to take care of, you're going to put them in that kind of environment, you're going to also make sure that, one, they are treasured by America's citizens. And you're not going to have them looking at American citizens as less than or something other than what they are. It's those people, it's the idea, the concepts of this nation, those words that are crafted so beautifully in the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. That's what you're fighting for. That's what we fight for. And when somebody, any one person, steps up to think that they're it, and you do my whims, that's when we break. That's when we break. And to the greater point, there was a clear vision to protect us from having this kind of breakdown in structure, because that's what we're fighting for. That's what we're fighting to protect. And so we've got to treat those soldiers, sailors, and Marine, Coast Guardsmen, and spacemen so that, one, they understand that they are not a political tool against each other, not a political tool against another party. They are a political weapon for American policy externally, principally.
I want to go to my panel. Greg Carr. Greg Carr, your question.
Thank you, Roland, and thank you, Brother General. It's clear at this point that this man has been having basically political rallies at military events and military installations. My question is really a two-part question very quickly. One, what do you expect this Saturday in terms of what's going on here? I was just left the Smithsonian and seeing everything lining up down there. We know it's not going to be a celebration of the Army, but a celebration of Donald Trump, which of course flies in the face of exactly what General Milley was talking about. What are you expecting Saturday to come out of this man's mouth with the entire United States Army as a backdrop staging for his branding exercise? And then could you say a word about the duty of active military to refuse to carry out unlawful orders, because that's clearly what we're inching toward.
First of all, I hope that no one has to actively refuse an order that is illegal or immoral, but they have that requirement to do that if they say it's illegal or immoral. And so I hope that doesn't come to fruition. The second thing is I won't try to give you my vision because it's always dangerous to project what will happen or what. I can tell you a little bit about what I can. And by the way, June 14th is also my birthday. It's also Flag Day, and it is also the Army's birthday. It was, in my mind, the least of days to celebrate because it is one parochial to Army. If you want to do the flag, and the argument that was made was that we never celebrate our wars. We never celebrate winning war because the results of war are never final. And no one has seen the end of war except the dead. Soldiers understand that. So we celebrate. We celebrate when you see us walking down the street, we celebrate the fact that we're home, that we achieved a mission. That's what we did in previous times. We weren't celebrating that we won because no single nation wins these major wars. So this idea that somehow this is, and this is the point that you're asking, I guess, that this is somehow a celebration of the military, it's a farce. It's a farce. It is a celebration to occur on a birthday. And I expect at some point in time, there will be a birthday celebration that will be part of this. And that's the thing.
Reese?
In fact, I even wrote about that a while back. He was going to try to do this. This was predictive because it goes to the word of one of the essential values. The Army believes in loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. Selfless service is not in his DNA.
Reese?
Critical in a
General,
command. Yes, ma'am.
yes. General, I'm curious, based on your experience, what do you think is, from what we're seeing in terms of the cheering and seeming support from the military for Donald Trump, how much of that is because of the audience he's curating versus how much the sentiment is pro-Trump to the point of what you pointed out, their duty to refuse an unlawful or an immoral order? How much do you think we should be concerned? Because I'm very, very concerned.
Yeah. At this point, I would not be concerned yet. In fact, I was encouraged when I saw the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, fire out a letter that talked about the depoliticization of our military. And he cautioned that there's a decorum for the reception of how we treat and listen to the president, the commander-in-chief, when he's talking to the troops. So at this point, I am less concerned. But you have to understand what he did is very little that he's for. It's the things he's against. And what you are against allows you to create the kind of anger, because that's a much easier emotion to address, what you're against versus what you're for. And unfortunately, he knows how to use those tools. This will be a parade. It will come across this time as pretty innocuous, not so much other than a parade. And to most Americans, that's what they think they will see. But the challenge is, it's what third world leaders do. You put your forces out in the hot sun so they can run out and show the weapons and things like that. When bases do this, they do it with local communities because they want the community to know what's in their backyard, and they always make it family friendly. And it's designed so that there's an intimacy between the community and their bases. This is not one that this nation needs for its community, for its citizens writ large. We don't need it, and most know that. Most know that.
Zabora?
Hi, thank you so much for your service. We know that Black and Brown service members are being deployed into our Black and Brown communities. So, with them going in these communities against their own moral compass or named political reasons, how do we ensure that military discipline doesn't turn our troops into some kind of American Gestapo? And how do we protect their rights to refuse participation in missions that violate both their ethics and the communities that they're coming from?
Yeah.
I got about 90. General, I got about 90 seconds. Go.
I'll go quick. You ought to have a little bit of comfort in the fact that if you do see those faces, remember there's a consciousness behind them. There's a consciousness behind them. And, it's like they wake up in the morning, they know who they're dealing with. And that will be part of the saving grace, is that you will see Americans, the full breadth of Americans in those formations. And you ought to hope that you see some Black and brown faces in those formations. And by the way, I encourage cameras to be out all the time. And I would also encourage you to, one, do what King did. Don't give anybody a reason to do something that will become escalatory. If I were a community leader, I would make sure that, one, there's leadership at all places that do exactly what Jesse and what Andrew Young did to Martin Luther King Jr. We have a mission. We're protesting, protect each other. Don't give them a reason to go ahead and declare and show pictures of us as the aggressor and as the culprit. That's what I would tell you.
All right, then. General Ray, I appreciate it. Thanks a bunch for sharing your insight with our audience.
I appreciate you. And again, I appreciate your fire. I appreciate you saying some of the things that most of us don't and won't and can't say for a lot of reasons, because you need that fire. It's the same caution that we always had. King worked well because Malcolm was on the other end. Thank you all very much.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.